think, a unionist organization with a single leadership. It's all over the place. And it is fattening on the rage and despair that many, including many American Jews, feel about what seems to be, it is an obdurate and immovable Israeli government. However, I think this is also an issue for American Jews as American Jews. And the reason it has to do with Mr. Adelson and his partner in settlement, a man named Irving Moskowitz, less well known. Also, the bingo king of South Florida, a retired doctor who's donated many millions of dollars to trying to settle American Jews, I think principally, but in any case Israeli Jews as well, in East Jerusalem in order to basically appropriate East Jerusalem. Well, Mr. Adelson and Mr. Moskowitz, as funders of not-for-profit foundations, benefit from American tax incentives for these donations. These donations are at war not only with international law, which recognizes the West Bank as occupied territory, but also with the also at war with American policy, which decidedly, whatever practicalities are lacking, does not agree that this is Israeli territory. And yet, Mr. Moskowitz and Mr. Adelson and his fellow believers are beneficiaries of a concession by American law. It is an outrage, and it should be opposed. And it seems to me that if somebody who supports BDS wants to work with me on that project, I'm fine with that. We will disagree about many other things. The one-state solution, which so much of the BDS, which seems to be the goal of so much of the BDS movement, we see before our eyes. It's the one-state war. It's not a solution. But if somebody still wants to disagree, fine. I would like people who share this disposition to participate in public debates at universities and elsewhere about what we think about this very American banking of an atrocious occupation is involved.
So, what you're talking about is influencing power through the tax system. Any other ways to influence power?
We are fighting the battle on two fronts, and we have to fight on the two fronts simultaneously. We have to oppose efforts to delegitimize the Jewish state, and I think that the BDS movement is such an effort. And we have to work in the Jewish community against those people who support the occupation. Todd has suggested one way of doing that. We are people who speak and talk and write and argue, so we should be speaking, writing, and arguing in every synagogue, in every Jewish organization that we can have access to. We should be arguing against the support for the Netanyahu government. We should be arguing in ways that begin to make it clear to American politicians that if they adopt a much stronger opposition to the occupation, they will have support in the Jewish community here in the United States. And that, there is that old political question, what ought to be done, which I always associate with the Bolsheviks. Many years ago, Martin Buber, arguing against Lenin, said the right question is, what should I do? And I do have some ideas about that. They don't relate to power structures.
Tell us what your ideas are.
My friend, the Israeli political theorist Shlomo Avineri, has argued for many years for what he calls Hoxie Aliyah. Okay, he says, you're not going to come, you're not going to live here. Make Hoxie Aliyah, halfway Aliyah. And that means visit often, send your kids, not only on birthright, but for semesters, for years of study. Form partnerships, intellectual academic collaborations. Come often. And when you come, I agree with what Peter said this morning, you've got to talk to the Palestinians. But you also have to hold hands with the Jews who are fighting the occupation, because they need a sense that they have support outside Israel. So I think the most important thing, look, we send them our right-wing mishuggahs, but we don't send them enough of the people like us. And the more that we are there, even if only for a month, a semester, a year, the more that we are there, arguing, but supporting our friends and joining the demonstration. You know, it's a, in the old days, the left had an international brigade. You could go fight for leftism in Spain. We don't have, now it's the Muslim extremists who have an international brigade called ISIS. We don't have that, but we need to have that sense that we can volunteer in a political struggle in Israel. And if you don't have a kid in the army and you feel leery about joining a demonstration, then walk side by side with an Israeli friend who has a kid in the army, and you can do that. I recently joined an argument in Israel about how to fight in places like Gaza, how to fight an asymmetric war. And I was arguing against the way the Israelis fought in Gaza, but I did it with Avishai Margalit, an Israeli friend. We published an article first in Haaretz, then in the New York Review of Books, in response to some Israelis who had defended the Gaza war. So we have friends there. They aren't in power now. They will one day, we have to hope, be in power. And we should be standing with them, not only here, but also there.
So that raises a bunch of issues, but let me start with the following one. What about friends among the Palestinians? Do we have access to Palestinian peace groups? Can we walk with the Palestinians as we march down the streets of Jerusalem? Or are we locked into an alliance with the good Israelis?
Well, the good Jews have friends among the Palestinians. And that is also a friendship that we can join in. Most of my meetings with Palestinian activists who support the two-state solution have come through Shalom Achshava. They have come through friends in Israel, and I think those meetings are very important.
So let me ask the second question, though, which comes out of your comments. I'm not an Israeli, but I am a citizen of a government which supports Israel in ways that I might disapprove of. So perhaps I should address this question to Todd. What do we do as academics, as intellectuals, as public intellectuals, to change the policies of our government, that is, to bring pressure on Americans? Is there any kind of pressure to bring?
This is not an auspicious moment to supply a happy answer to that question.
I want you to know that I asked Todd this question because I met him first on the streets of Chicago in 1968.
Did I have any auspicious answer?
And since then, trying to change the government's policies.
Yes. I, in the short run, see very little prospect for doing that. But actually, I want to come back, if I may, artlessly, to the question of what it is that we, as people who tend to inhabit universities, and what we do and should be doing.
What should I do?
Okay, what should I do? When I went to Israel last, I arranged appointments with a number of Palestinians. I had the most forthright conversations I could have with them, mostly to educate myself. I believe we need to be doing that on the campuses. And I think we need to put it to Palestinians and other Arabs from the Middle East that if they can imagine having conversations with Hamas, which is, after all, a subscriber to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and a subscriber to the notion that the Jews must be driven out of the Holy Land, then they can have some conversations with Israelis, which is one reason why I particularly detest the notion that Israeli academics have become persona non grata categorically. That is, to me, a repulsive notion, and I propose to resist it as much as possible. So yes, my door is open to Palestinians, and I would welcome suggestions about what I could do to have that conversation.
And on the American side,
About what to do about the United States government?
is there anything we could or should be doing?
It's very hard. I'm not alone in having been looking for ways to try to mount pressure on the status quo arrangement. Almost all American aid to Israel is military aid. There's very little that is not. And so yes, I'm prepared to, or if somebody can make a case that certain kinds of military aid, or for that matter, corporate dealings, are specifically tied to maintaining the occupation. If it's a matter, for example, of caterpillars, bulldozers. I don't know if it is, but when you hear such thing. I think that's a discussion worth having about how to penalize them. By the same token, I think it behooves us to take seriously the Israeli security needs. So I'm not somebody who can say cavalierly that we should cut military aid to Israel. If it would be lovely for the cleanliness of my point of view, if somebody could make a case about some particular supplies, some particular military industrial operations that are tied directly and if not exclusively, at least mostly exclusively, to the occupation. But again, given the politics of our situation, and yes, and Peter, the most distressing thing I heard this morning was Peter's report of what Hillary Clinton has been saying. And she needs to hear from people who may end up being her supporters. I have no illusions about how budgeable she will be, but one does what one can.
So what I'm hearing from both of you, but especially from you, Todd, is that we're not what you might call single issue voters. That is, that we have an object in mind with relationship to justice in and for Israel and Palestinians. And we want to make alliances with people who support some way to get there, no matter who they are or where they come from. Am I hearing that correctly? So,
Well, if by the latter you're referring to the BDS people?
I'm
Or
referring
some
to
BDS people?
BDS people, but what about Hillel people,
Oh.
for example, who don't allow certain kinds of conversations?
I think they're-
Certain kinds of people on campus, but do support Israeli security needs.
I think they're gravely mistaken, and I will seize upon every opportunity I have to tell them that. I think they need to be something more than a bristling ghetto of righteousness. They need to be intellectually alert, morally serious, and take seriously that they are affiliated with universities, which I think are still curious about truth.
Are there any boycotts you would support?
Yes. I do take seriously the choice of comrades as a political, very crucial political issue. And there are people I wouldn't work with. But I would, if there are
No red light. This one's out too.
Here.
Is it on? Imagine a European government which has an embassy in Israel, which is publicly committed to the two-state solution. And there are people in that country urging a boycott of goods from the West Bank. I would certainly support a boycott of that sort by a state that is publicly committed to the existence of the State of Israel. I would not work with, even for a boycott of that sort, I would not work with people who are publicly committed to the elimination of the State of Israel. But yes, I think boycotts of goods from the West Bank, boycotts of companies that do business on the West Bank are justified. We should be organizing them, and we can support them when they are organized by people who share our goals. And I might support even stronger. Some of my Israeli friends, now my Israeli friends are my age, they are old Mapayniks. And I have been surprised at how many of them they're all opposed to the academic boycotts for reasons that Todd just gave. But many of them are beginning to support economic boycotts. So long as they come from governments that have ambassadors in Israel. That's what they want. They want pressure from people who are friends. And I think we should support that kind of pressure.
Try that one.
Some of my Israeli friends, along with quite a number of cultural figures in Israel, do support one academic boycott, and that is Ariel University. And I support them. I was actually invited to give a talk there a few years ago, and I declined, and rightly so. It is built on occupied land, but that is the one exception.
Would you support counter boycotts? That is, American academics affiliating with Haifa University or Bar-Ilan or one of the other universities from a progressive perspective?
I know some people are doing that. I certainly see. To me, that's a personal matter. I mean, it's not something to be. It's not an ultimatum to be issued, but I certainly think that's a plausible way of making. I don't know how much it's a strategy, but it's certainly a way of making a statement.
Yeah, and it makes you feel good. I have an honorary faculty membership at the University of Haifa, so that I can tell an English university that invites me that I am a professor at Haifa University, and if they are supporting the boycott, they had better take back the invitation, which they don't take back, and then I tell them, well, you're not boycotting Israel.
I love it.
So by that standard, we should all affiliate with Israeli universities. So let me just sort of move on just a little bit. This new wave of violence that's hit Israel, How do we position ourselves, presumably, you know, as lefties, as peaceniks? Do we support this wave of violence? Do we simply acknowledge it? What's our stance in the face of this?
Well, we're condemning. It's grotesque. It's indefensible. And as a number of speakers this morning pointed out, it is not justifiable, but it is a predictable outcome of a grotesque and, if anything, worsening situation. I don't have any trouble condemning violence against civilians of any kind. So that one doesn't keep me up at night. I don't doubt what the right position is on that.
That's I agree entirely.